Hey there, in this video we're going to talk about metaphors and similes because good writers can use strategies like comparisons and allusions and metaphors to affect the mood and the tone of their writing. So make lots of metaphors and similes in your paper.
So this is a pretty hard skill. This doesn't really have much to do with argument in writing as much as it has to do with writing in general.
Just good writing.
So good writing. So when you're using an allusion or a metaphor in your writing, it's a way to make you a more sophisticated writer. I like this cartoon. Here's metaphor. You're a weasel. So in a metaphor, you're not using anything like or as. And then this guy's saying, well, I'm like one. And he's the simile. Ha ha ha. I thought that was funny. Anyway, let's talk about allusion first. I think allusion is a trickier one in my opinion. An allusion is a figure of speech that makes a reference to a place, person, or something that happened, usually like a popular culture reference. So here are some examples. I was surprised his nose was not growing like Pinocchio's. Pinocchio here is the allusion because they're talking about somebody lying and they're referencing, so they're alluding to the movie Pinocchio.
So you have to know a little bit about Pinocchio in order to understand the allusion.
But this what it basically does is rather than saying the person's lying a lot, they can say, I was surprised his nose was not growing like Pinocchio's. Is that it just makes it a stronger writing. It makes it kind of like elevates it up to the next level.
Saying he was lying, but you're not using the word lying. You're kind of referencing it through this allusion.
Yeah, so it makes it so when you reference things through allusions, you still make the same point, but it makes your writing a little bit more complex and sophisticated. Here's another example. When she lost her job, she acted like a Scrooge and refused to buy anything that wasn't necessary.
So you have to know who Scrooge is. And
that's the illusion.
And once you know who Scrooge is, then the sentence becomes kind of funny that she's like not spending any money. Okay?
I thought the software would be useful, but it was a Trojan horse. You'd have to know that the Trojan horse story of Troy and all that.
The big horse on the beach and... Okay, so you have to kind of, if you don't know what that means, you might need to look it up. But that would be the story of the big horse that all the Greeks jumped out of on the shore of Troy.
When we're talking about allusions, it's also important to remember your audience, because you don't want to use an allusion that you don't believe your audience would be familiar with.
Right, or would understand. So that's a really important key.
So he was a real Romeo with the ladies. You probably all know Romeo and Juliet.
That's
Romeo
probably one of the easiest allusions, right?
Being popular with the ladies. Or chocolate was her Achilles' heel, another historical ancient story. But Achilles, the only place he could be, he was basically invincible except for his heel. So referencing the fact that chocolate was the way she could go get taken down.
Chocolate was her weak spot.
Her weak spot, yep. Okay. So this is an allusion, and here's the examples. So basically, it's just referencing something outside of the paper, sort of in popular culture. And you can see that by doing these things, rather than this is going to elevate your writing to just sound more sophisticated.
Okay.
All right, so let's talk about metaphors next. And metaphors is the same thing. It's just elevating your writing to the next level. A metaphor is a comparison between two unlike things, not using like or as we saw in the beginning. The simile used I'm like a weasel. The metaphor is just you are a weasel. So
so no like or as in a metaphor.
So they sound pretty simple, and we actually use them more than you'd probably think. But when you're planning to write metaphors and trying to write metaphors, it actually does get a little bit tricky. Like I said, this is probably one of the harder skills out of all the videos. So here's some examples. The typical teenage boy's room is a disaster area. It isn't literally a disaster area, but it's comparing the room to a disaster area.
It's like a disaster area.
So it's rather than say the boy's room is like a disaster area, it just is a disaster area. And again, it's a metaphor. It's not being serious, but it's still making the comparison.
You could say disaster zone or ground zero if you wanted to.
Her eyes were fireflies. Oh, how romantic.
Pretty and sparkly.
So you see that they're just comparing it without the like or as. The computer in the classroom was an old dinosaur. Was it literally a dinosaur?
No.
Triceratops in your room? No.
Just this old, slow computer, right?
So again, the metaphor is when you make the comparison, but you just state it. Her eyes were fireflies. No like or as. Okay, so I want you to try it out, and this might be a little general, but we'll try it. On your practice page, just write allusion and metaphor, and we want you to come up with a few. So try writing 2 or 3 allusions where you're actually going to allude to something else in pop culture, and then try to write a couple metaphors, and it can be about anything. So that might be easy, or it might be hard to write about anything, but we'll see.
We'll give it a try.
We'll give it a try. So write a couple of allusions and write a couple of metaphors comparing any two things. so that we
just to get some practice.
just get some practice so that we know that you understand what you're doing.